The brown-haired woman reflects on the 2 years that have passed while reviewing a formal invitation. Nyari ponders her current existence, feeling a strange sense of displacement within this new, noble reality. She recalls the disorienting moment of waking up in this world, her hands reaching toward an unfamiliar ceiling. Examining her reflection, Nyari concludes her plain features and brown eyes mark her as a mere background character. She lets out a soft sigh, accepting her role as an unremarkable member of the aristocracy. Her thoughts drift to her past life's hardships in an orphanage, starkly contrasting with her current luxury. Her mother looks over the letter, suggesting a new dress is absolutely necessary for the upcoming social event. Nyari downplays the importance of the ball, attempting to avoid unnecessary fuss over her simple appearance. Her mother insists on perfection, revealing the Count of Winchester's bachelor status is the true motivation. Nyari laughs off the suggestion, finding her mother's matchmaking efforts more amusing than serious. Her mother affectionately praises her beauty, determined to see her daughter shine among the elite guests. Nyari remains skeptical of her own charms, feeling her mother's perspective is biased by maternal affection. A formal portrait reveals the family dynamic, capturing a moment of aristocratic poise and shared history. She shares a warm, laughing moment with her mother, gently dismissing the high praise as loving exaggeration. At the grand ball, Nyari focuses on the sweets rather than the complex social politics surrounding her. A dark memory surfaces of Anshu, the cruel man Danielle was destined to marry in the original story. She remembers her previous life's lonely commute, where reading about Danielle's resilience first touched her heart. A sudden sense of being watched breaks her concentration, and she scans the room with growing suspicion. Venturing into a quiet, shadowed corridor, she senses another presence hidden away from the main festivities. The sound of a steady footstep echoes as she realizes this secluded area is no place for children. She peeks through a doorway, her heart aching as she recalls Danielle's tragic and lonely childhood. She discovers young Danielle playing quietly with her plush rabbit, Usatan, in the silent, hidden room. The child imagines her plush friend inviting her to dance, creating a small, private world of comfort. Nyari softly whispers a thank you to the plushie, moved by the young girl's innocent imagination. Young Danielle stands alone, her bright blonde hair and blue eyes a stark contrast to her isolation. The girl's wide blue eyes reflect a deep-seated sadness that goes completely unnoticed by the world outside. She clutches her rabbit tight, offering a small apology to her only companion for their shared loneliness. Looking at her toy, the little girl asks what is wrong, projecting her own sorrow onto her friend. A heavy silence fills the room as the young girl stares down with a look of profound melancholy. She laments the total isolation of her life, certain that no one ever visits her hidden corner. Sudden footsteps sound nearby, causing her to freeze in shock as the silence is finally broken. Trembling with fear, the young girl holds her plushie close and demands to know who has arrived. Nyari sits beside the young child, attempting to bridge the gap between their two very different worlds. She gently offers the girl some cookies, hoping a simple treat might ease the child's evident distress. Nyari kindly assures her that she is under no pressure to eat if she doesn't feel comfortable. As Nyari prepares to leave, the little girl watches her with wide-eyed surprise and unspoken curiosity. Nyari walks away into the hallway, leaving the child behind to process their brief, unexpected encounter. She reminds herself that she must return to the main hall before her absence is noted. A cold, authoritative voice demands to know her identity, stopping Nyari dead in her tracks. Nyari gasps in terror as a sharp blade is suddenly leveled at her throat, gleaming dangerously. She finds herself staring into the piercing, cold blue eyes of a man who radiates lethal intent. The man draws his sword with a sharp sh-ing sound, demanding she explain her presence immediately. Fear paralyzes Nyari as she realizes she has been caught in a highly compromising and dangerous situation. She recognizes the imposing figure as Danielle's father, a man known for his cold and formidable nature. The sword tip rests precariously close, threatening her life if she makes even the slightest wrong move. They stand in a tense standoff within the ornate hall, the atmosphere heavy with the threat of violence. The man identifies her as an intruder, his voice low and dangerous as he orders her to stay still. Panic surges through Nyari at the accusation, her mind racing to find a way to explain her intrusion. He inwardly chastises himself for being caught off guard, though his exterior remains perfectly calm and menacing. Desperately, she identifies herself as Nyari de Pomatz, pleading that her presence is merely a harmless misunderstanding. Laurinus de Winchester points his sword at the blonde Nyari, coldly demanding to know her purpose there. Trembling with a nervous smile, Nyari desperately claims she was just lost while trying to deliver some cookies. The black-haired count's piercing blue eyes and stoic glare leave Nyari feeling completely terrified for her life. A sharp click sounds as Laurinus sheathes his blade, startling the wide-eyed Nyari with his sudden shift. Nyari reacts with shock and disbelief when the normally aloof man surprisingly chooses to believe her transparent excuse. Maintaining his characteristic calm, Laurinus explains that his intuition is enough to convince him of her honesty. Surrounded by a divine aura, the black-haired man formally introduces himself as Laurinus de Winchester. Nyari thinks to herself that he doesn't seem sorry at all, despite his polite offer of a carriage. Laurinus ignores her protests as he begins to walk away, insisting on providing her with a safe return. Leaning in with an intimidating presence, Laurinus asks if she plans to reject his sincerity, forcing her compliance. As the moon hangs high, a soft rustle sounds while Nyari reflects on finally meeting the young Danielle. Sitting alone in the plush carriage, Nira's face is filled with mounting anxiety over the evening's bizarre events. Nyari touches her face, disheartened by the small wound she received during her tense encounter with the Count. The carriage wheels rattle through the night as Nyari wonders if Laurinus is secretly tracking her movements. Clutching her fists, Nyari fears her persistence will lead to a restraining order preventing her from seeing Danielle. Her heart aches with longing as she stares into the night, desperate for another chance to reunite with Danielle. Laurinus turns in surprise as the library door opens and little Danielle enters, holding a pink stuffed bunny. Standing in the doorway, the young girl admits she isn't sleepy yet, catching the Count's full attention. Surrounded by sweet treats, Laurinus gently asks the little girl if she is feeling sleepy, or perhaps just hungry. Laurinus notices the bag of cookies Danielle is holding and asks if she received them from the recent visitor. Danielle beams with innocent joy as she confirms the kind lady from before gave her the delicious treats. The blonde child looks up at her father with a curious and expectant expression as she clutches her rabbit. A rare, soft smile touches the Count's lips as he looks down at his daughter amidst a floral background. Laurinus turns to prepare a light snack for Danielle, his cold demeanor softening for the sake of his daughter. A sudden, sharp stop echoes through the hall as Laurinus pauses to contemplate the name Nyari Pomatz. Back at her home, a black-haired woman reacts with dramatic shock to Nyara's story of the recent events. Nyari laughs off the situation, though a small bandage remains visible on her cheek from the sword's grace. Her friend leans in with concern, questioning how Nyari managed to return with a cut on her face. The black-haired woman gasps in excitement at the mention of Lord Winchester, her eyes sparkling with romantic interest. Nyari is baffled by her sister-in-law's sudden shift from anger to joy, unable to understand the cause. Her sister-in-law gushes with delight, predicting that this encounter might lead to Nyari becoming the next Lady Winchester. Shocked by the suggestion, Nyari vehemently denies any possibility of marriage with the man who threatened her. Standing with her companions in a sunlit room, Nyari attempts to downplay the severity of the entire incident. She explains that Lord Winchester acted as if the injury were nothing, much to her friend's continued disbelief. Reflecting on his cold behavior, Nyari agrees that the Count didn't show a single ounce of genuine remorse. The brown-haired mother looks on with a grim and suspicious expression as she listens to the unfolding story. Nyari blinks in confusion at her mother's intensifying silence and the dark aura radiating from her. The mother erupts in fury, declaring she will never forgive Winchester for harming her precious, beloved daughter. Noting her mother's unprecedented rage, Nyari realizes a letter is being prepared to address the Count's actions. Nyari wonders nervously if her mother plans to demand a formal apology for the wound on her cheek. A pen moves across parchment, drafting a stern message stating that House Winchester must bear full responsibility. In his study, Lorenus reads the letter regarding a permanent scar, his expression thoughtful as he processes the claim. Time passes as Nyari yawns in her bright room, relieved that no legal orders were issued against her. After a peaceful night, Nyari wakes up seeing her wound has healed, only to hear an urgent shout. An excited maid bursts into the room holding a letter, announcing that a reply has finally arrived. Beaming with excitement, the maid reveals the message is a direct response from the house of Count Winchester. Nyari stares in absolute shock as the maid joyfully delivers the news of an impending marriage proposal. A sudden scream of disbelief echoes from the mansion as Nyari processes the completely unexpected turn of fate. Nyari sits in a daze, her mind spinning as she faces the reality of the Count's official response. Sitting across from Lorenus in a grand parlor, Nyari contemplates the startling circumstances that brought them back together. Nyari reels in shock as Lord Winchester declares his intention to take responsibility by marrying her. Clink! The sound of a teacup punctuates Nyari's internal panic as she questions such a hasty marriage decision. The black-haired Lord Winchester sternly asks Nyari if she planned to accept his proposal from the very beginning. Nyari feels ignored, noting that he hasn't even politely asked about her well-being despite their intense confrontation. Lord Winchester maintains a cold, impassive gaze, offering no warmth as they sit together in the elegant room. Nyari reflects on her unremarkable nature, accepting her role as a talentless background character who is easily forgotten. She sighs at her own reflection, identifying as a mere human and a minor supporting character in the story. Bathed in a golden glow, Lord Winchester watches her with an unreadable but piercingly intense expression. Nyari looks up with wide, shimmering eyes, seemingly affected by the man's overwhelming presence and direct words. Startled by the sudden turn of events, Nyari can only offer a confused response to his unexpected directness. A faint blush creeps onto Lord Winchester's cheeks as he looks away, revealing a rare moment of embarrassment. Sunk into the red sofa, Nyari looks small and uncertain while facing the tall, formidable man across from her. Nyari's face softens and her blush deepens as she looks back at him with a gentle, surprised expression. Peeking from behind a white pillar, the young blonde Danielle watches the interaction with a timid, curious gaze. Nyari breaks into a warm, genuine smile, her previous tension melting away as she sees the young girl. Danielle shyly approaches and thanks Nyari, mentioning that the cookies she provided earlier were truly delicious. Looking up with big, soulful eyes, the blonde child expresses her sincere gratitude to a touched Nyari. Nyari watches the girl with surprise and realization, noticing the spark of happiness she has brought to Danielle. Lord Winchester's gaze shifts toward the child as he acknowledges Danielle's presence in the grand, ornate room. Nyari turns her attention back to the man, her expression shifting from gentleness to a more serious resolve. Standing in the grand hallway, Nyari takes a deep breath and declares her intention to marry Lord Winchester. With a bright, performative smile, Nyari claims it was love at first sight, hiding her true motivations within. Later, alone and looking dejected, Nyari admits to herself that her passionate declaration of love was a lie. Lord Winchester accepts her decision with a cool, professional nod, showing no outward sign of emotion. Nyari gazes ahead with a touch of melancholy, reflecting on the strangeness of their sudden, forced engagement. Time passes, and a relaxed Nyari sits in a green gown, engrossed in a book within a lavishly decorated room. Jump! Nyari leaps from her seat in total shock as her mother mentions a massive dowry for the marriage. Russell! Nyari frantically scans the documents, feeling betrayed by the man who claimed marriage wasn't a business deal. Fuming in a chibi-style outburst, Nyari curses Lord Winchester for his apparent greed and secret plotting. She stares forward with a cold, hardened gaze, her estimation of the man's character sinking to a new low. Meeting in his sunlit study, Lord Winchester immediately brings up the practical arrangements for their upcoming wedding. Standing before him in her white and pink dress, Nyari looks stunned by his businesslike approach to their union. Focusing on his paperwork, the black-haired man dismisses any sentimental concerns, stating that everything is already settled. He tells Nyari she may decide all the wedding details herself, showing a complete lack of personal interest. Nyari tentatively asks about the expected dowry, hoping to clear up the confusion regarding his supposed financial demands. Click! Lord Winchester sets his pen down and firmly declares the dowry is zero, repeating his stance on marriage. Nyari is left speechless, staring at him in confusion, as his words contradict everything her mother had implied. An elegant profile of Lord Winchester captures his sharp features and blue eyes against a backdrop of floral motifs. Slide! He opens a drawer and presents a box, announcing that the wedding rings have arrived for her. Nyari gazes into the box, mesmerized by the beautiful silver ring set with vibrant, sparkling blue gemstones. He asks her to try it on to check the fit, and Nyari obliges with a dazed, uncertain expression. While looking at the ring, Nyari wonders about Danielle's mother and the mysterious person the jewelry once belonged to. He calmly notes that he will have the ring resized, maintaining his distant and professional demeanor throughout the meeting. Nyari asks if there is anything more important to discuss, searching for some sign of personal connection from him. Flip! He turns the pages of a schedule to discuss the wedding date, revealing a life consumed by duty. He lists a series of inspections and tutoring sessions, leaving very few days available for their actual ceremony. Nyari points to a date, realizing with a forced smile that there isn't actually anything left to choose from. Lord Winchester stares at her with intense blue eyes, his hands clasped as he waits for her final confirmation. Click! The sound of footsteps marks Nyari's exit as she concludes work is more important to him than marriage. Gazing out the window, Nyari wonders what Lord Winchester's true motives are for entering into this strange arrangement. Nyari ponders her secret motivations as she gazes out at the lush, sunlit greenery of the palace garden. Spotting a figure in the distance, the hat-wearing Nyari notes her primary reason for the sudden marriage. She approaches the young Danielle beneath the shade of a large tree, softly calling out the girl's name. The blonde-haired child looks up with a start, greeting Nyari with a nervous and stuttering hello. Nyari kindly asks about her activities, and Danielle admits her failed attempt at crafting rings from flowers. With a cheerful expression, Nyari offers her help and asks the young girl to hold out her hand. Danielle shyly agrees, her wide blue eyes reflecting a cautious but growing sense of trust. A gentle touch follows as Nyari takes the small hand of the child in hers to begin their task. Nyari's face falls as she notices Danielle's bitten nails, prompting a guilty apology from the self-conscious young girl. Radiant and warm, Nyari offers a comforting smile to soothe the child's obvious distress and anxiety. Danielle stares back in silent wonder, captivated by the unexpected kindness shown by the new woman in her life. Shifting the mood, Nyari asks the young girl if she is familiar with the symbolic language of flowers. The blonde-haired child looks up curiously, her interest piqued by the mysterious and poetic concept. Nyari explains that every bloom carries its own special meaning as they sit together amidst the vibrant flora. She specifically mentions that the humble clover represents happiness, a sentiment Danielle repeats with quiet awe. Nyari carefully places a handmade white flower crown atop Danielle's golden head, marking a moment of genuine connection. Touching the delicate petals, Danielle whispers the word happiness, as if trying to understand the feeling itself. Danielle tentatively addresses Nyari as her mother, leaving the older woman momentarily stunned by the sudden label. A joyous and bright smile spreads across Nyari's face, her heart seemingly filled with warmth at the child's acceptance. Nari waves a cheerful goodbye as she walks through the sun-drenched woods, leaving Danielle with her new crown. The scene shifts to the interior of the palace as Nyari reflects on Danielle's difficult and lonely upbringing. Clad in a flowing white gown, Nyari walks down the aisle to join Lord Winchester for their wedding ceremony. Lord Winchester maintains a stern and stoic profile, showing little emotion as he prepares to take his vows. The couple stands together at the altar, a striking pair surrounded by the grandeur of the high society wedding. Nyari looks up with wide, slightly overwhelmed eyes, feeling the weight of the life-changing commitment she is making. The officiant commands the couple to seal their marital vows with a kiss, heightening the tension of the moment. Lord Winchester leans in and kisses Nyari, formally uniting them in marriage before their gathered guests. Standing side by side after the ceremony, the newlywed couple presents a picture of noble elegance and quiet resolve. Later that night, Nyari exhales a tired sigh while reflecting on the exhausting pace of their hasty wedding preparations. Walking through the dimly lit palace hallway, she decides to retire to bed early to recover from the day. Entering the room, she is startled to find Lord Winchester already there, clad in a dark, open robe. He looks at her with a piercing gaze, his muscular chest partially exposed in the soft, moonlit atmosphere. Nyari blushes deeply, suddenly and acutely aware of the intimate reality of their new status as husband and wife. Lord Winchester gently tilts her chin upward, his close proximity and calm demeanor sending Nyari into a flustered state. She holds her face in panic, suddenly remembering that they are expected to share the same bed tonight. Lying stiffly in the large bed, a wide-eyed Nyari feels the heavy tension of sharing a space with him. Lord Winchester calls her name, prompting a nervous response as they lie in the quiet of their wedding night. He calmly assures her that he will maintain proper restraint, attempting to put her racing heart at ease. Feeling a wave of relief, Nyari softly thanks him as she gazes at the elegant bedside lamp. Even with his assurance, Nyari remains awake, staring into the darkness and contemplating her strange new circumstances. She squeezes her eyes shut, lamenting the awkwardness of sleeping beside a man she still barely knows. The morning sun streams into the room as Nyari wakes up alone, feeling surprisingly refreshed after her rest. Walking through the opulent halls, she notes the quietness and reflects on the hectic events of the past days. Nyari sits at the end of a long, empty dining table, looking small and isolated in the vast room. She stares in shock at the unoccupied seats, her expression turning to one of deep disappointment and confusion. A maid informs her that Danielle and Lord Winchester have already finished breakfast, leaving Nyari to eat alone. Feeling a pang of sadness, Nyari compares the cold atmosphere to the warm, bustling family meals she once knew. Memories of her past life as an orphan surface, reminding her of the lonely, silent meals she once endured. Kacha! A sharp clink rings out as she grips her utensils, her hands trembling with a sense of isolation. Neri sits in dejection, devastated to find herself feeling the same old loneliness even in this new world. Neri resolves to create a warm and welcoming atmosphere at the dining table through her own efforts. Dreaming of a happy family meal, Neri realizes she must find a way to connect with her husband. Neri excitedly announces a group outing, inviting Lord Winchester and young Danielle to join her for the day. As the carriage rolls through the busy city streets, Neri expresses her gratitude for their shared time together. Neri sits across from the silent child, worrying that Danielle's heart remains close to her despite her efforts. Clutching her pink rabbit plush, Danielle looks down with a sad, pouting expression that tugs at Neri's heart. When Danielle asks about their destination, Neri realizes she hasn't explained the day's itinerary to the confused girl. Neri lists a series of fun shopping stops and asks Danielle if there is any food she dislikes. The blonde-haired child remains quiet and hesitant, her expression shadowed by a deep and lingering sense of uncertainty. Seeing the child's distress, Neri looks concerned, wondering how to bridge the gap and make her feel safe. In a flashback, a black-haired woman suggests that Neri should simply ask Lord Winchester about his personal life directly. The woman teasingly warns Neri that her current distance will prevent her from ever truly bonding with her husband. While embroidering a lily, the black-haired woman reveals that Lord Winchester's mother was frail and died during childbirth. A young, grieving Lord Winchester is shown holding white lilies, having turned to swordsmanship to cope with his loneliness. History reveals his father remarried before passing away 10 years ago, leaving behind 2 graves and a tragic legacy. Inheriting the title at a young age, the stoic man dedicated his life solely to duty and his martial skills. The narration explains that both his stepmother and sister died years ago, leaving Lord Winchester as the sole survivor. Looking at a portrait of the two, Neri realizes with a start that Danielle's true origins are still a mystery. The woman explains that Danielle's maternal lineage is unknown, making her a mysterious presence within the noble Winchester household. Neri absorbs this tragic family history, beginning to understand the cold and lonely environment Danielle has been raised in. While traveling through the woods, Neri reflects on the facts she learned, feeling more determined than ever to help Danielle. Neri apologizes for the child's discomfort, but Danielle's only concern is whether she will be sent away for good. Neri's eyes widen in absolute shock as she hears the little girl's heartbreaking question about leaving her home. Trembling with tears in her eyes, Danielle wonders if she is being sent to a nursery or a boarding school. Neri feels a pang of guilt, realizing her push for a warm family might have terrified the traumatized child instead. She recalls hearing rumors that the new mother dislikes children, fueling Danielle's deep-seated fear of repeat abandonment and rejection. When asked where she heard such things, Danielle admits that the late Countess Winchester was the source of malice. The child reveals the late Countess's cruelty, having been told that her lack of background was a source of anger. Neri is horrified to learn of the verbal abuse Danielle suffered, finally understanding why the girl is so withdrawn. With a radiant and sincere expression, Neri firmly tells Danielle that she truly loves her just as she is. She acknowledges that everything feels unfamiliar right now, but she promises to work hard to earn the girl's trust. Neri invites Danielle to call her mother whenever she feels ready, vowing to be the parent the girl deserves. Danielle's wide blue eye reflects Neri's kind face, capturing a pivotal moment of burgeoning trust and emotional connection. The atmosphere in the carriage softens as the two sit together, surrounded by a symbolic bloom of warmth and hope. Arriving at a stylish shop, a voice calls out in excitement as the shopping spree for Danielle finally begins. A playful compliment highlights how much cuter Danielle looks with her hair styled and in a bright new outfit. Dressed in a beautiful blue frilly gown with a matching bow, a blushing Danielle looks absolutely adorable and bewildered. Danielle shyly questions if she is allowed to wear such fine clothes, prompting a gentle correction from a smiling Niari. The young girl looks up with wide, hopeful eyes, mesmerized by the kindness and generosity shown by her new mother. Neri warmly tells her that everyone has the right to feel special and wear beautiful things, regardless of their past. Blushing deeply, Danielle softly agrees, her small voice reflecting a quiet but growing sense of happiness and belonging. The scene shifts back to the Grand Palace as a voice addresses Niari by her new noble title, Lady Faraday. Within the library, a maid presents Lord Winchester with a stack of receipts detailing Niari's generous purchases for the child. He reviews the documents with a neutral expression before instructing the head maid to distribute his new household orders. Humming a happy tune, Niari looks forward to a family dinner where they can finally bond as a group. Gotcha! The door swings open as Niari excitedly enters the dining hall, planning which stories to tell Danielle. Her enthusiasm vanishes as she sees the vast table with Lord Winchester sitting alone in isolated, formal silence. Neri hesitates, stunned by the massive distance between their seats, as Lord Winchester coldly invites her to join him. Sitting far away from her husband, Niari wonders if this extreme distance is his way of maintaining proper boundaries. Lord Winchester notes that Danielle is already in bed, his words punctuated by the sharp ka-cha of his cutlery. Neri sits at the dining table, noticing it is 8 o'clock, and wondering if meals are always late. Sitting at the far end of the long table, Lord Winchester tells her she can eat first. Neri looks down with a saddened expression, realizing they are not on the same wavelength at all. Struggling to hear him across the massive table, Niari questions if every dinner will feel this lonely. Resolving to change things, she clenches her fists and calls out to Lord Winchester to get his attention. Lord Winchester looks at her with his piercing blue eyes, waiting for her to continue speaking. Niari clarifies that her mention of the late dinner time was not because she felt dissatisfied. She explains to her silent husband that she simply wanted to change the stiff atmosphere between them. Lord Winchester asks why the atmosphere needs changing, while a small chibi version of him looks bewildered. Niari gives him a soft, warm smile, her eyes filled with hope as she looks at him. A close-up of Lord Winchester's face reveals his focused attention on Niari as she continues her explanation. Niari claps her hands excitedly, noting that 8 o'clock is still quite an early bedtime even for children. Neri mentions hearing that he went to bed at 8, causing the stoic Lord Winchester to cough awkwardly. He recalls his childhood while Niari apologizes, realizing her face might have betrayed her tactless thoughts. Neri looks at him with a sincere and calm gaze, determined to bridge the distance between them. Lord Winchester asks if her words were a compliment, and she admits she was just being honest. Neri explains that not all stepmothers dislike their husband's children, attempting to clear any misconceptions he has. Ka-cha! The sound of her fork hitting the plate rings out as she asks if he was worried. Lord Winchester offers a rare, gentle smile, finding Neri to be an increasingly interesting and surprising person. Stunned by his sudden change in expression, Niari gazes back at him with a look of pure shock. Neri firmly requests that they eat meals together as a family to foster a sense of true belonging. Lord Winchester listens calmly to her proposal and simply agrees to her request for shared family dinners. Niari beams with joy at his acceptance, eagerly planning to check on young Danielle's bedtime schedule. A chibi Lord Winchester notes that Niari looks full of passion as she excitedly discusses her new goals. Lord Winchester watches her walk away, thinking she is an interesting person as flowers symbolically bloom around him. The morning sun rises over the castle as a maid's panicked shouting wakes Niari with urgent news. Goodbye! Neri sits up in bed, asking the red-haired maid what could have possibly happened so early. The panicked maid points toward the lobby, her expression one of utter disbelief and mounting shock. Dawn! The lobby is overflowing with massive wooden crates as workmen deliver a huge amount of furniture. Miari laughs nervously to herself, realizing her shopping spree for Danielle might have been a bit excessive. Neri assures the startled maid that she paid for everything personally, disregarding the woman's hesitant apologies. The red-haired maid stands in stunned silence, staring at the sheer volume of goods her mistress purchased. Caught! A cold voice calls out to Niari as a stern woman in a black dress approaches. Introducing herself as Farede, the head maid apologizes while implying the child's furniture should have been sufficient. Niari looks toward the library, remembering that while the quality was good, the furniture was entirely wrong. Niari recalls seeing Danielle's struggle with adult-sized furniture, a clear sign of the household's neglect of her. Neri's expression darkens as she realizes that Faray, as headmaid, should have known the furniture was unsuitable. Niari glares at the headmaid, questioning if her failure to provide for the child was actually intentional. Farede criticizes Niari's shopping as wasteful, but Niari wonders if the head maid is hiding a deeper motive. The head maid warns against spending money freely, her stern face framed by dark, thorny silhouettes. Farede insults Niari's background, asking if she was always this wasteful before joining the Winchester household. Neri smiles defiantly, stating the money was spent for the precious young lady of the Winchester house. Farede remains silent, her cold and calculating gaze fixed on Niari as the tension between them grows. Gyu! Niari demands to see the household ledger, causing the defensive Farede to tightly clench her skirt. Neri questions why the ledger hasn't been kept for 2 years, sensing a major financial secret being hidden. Farede argues about the high costs of estate maintenance, but Niari highlights the territory's significant income. Dismissing the conversation with a smug smile, Farede claims ignorance, leaving Niari feeling frustrated and suspicious. Niari refuses to back down, her eyes filled with a sharp and righteous determination to uncover the truth. Noticing Farede's secret key, Niari suspects the head maid is embezzling Winchester funds while neglecting the child. Neri directly confronts Farede, stating it is clear that Danielle has not been treated well under her care. Neri questions the lack of a wet nurse or tutor, but Farede dismissively cites the late countess's policies. Niari expresses her disapproval, noting that the young child is being forced to wear poorly fitting, oversized clothes. A confident smile crosses Nira's face as she begins to orchestrate her plan to fix the household's neglect. Standing amidst delivery crates, Neri confronts Madame Farede and the red-haired maid, May, in the grand lobby. Madame Farede tries to enforce the previous countess's rules, but Niari bluntly reminds the head maid she is dead. A heavy and tense silence fills the room as Niari and Madame Farede exchange a cold, challenging stare. Neri beams with a radiant, triumphant expression, clearly satisfied with her decision to take charge of the situation. A sharp click echoes as Nira's heel hits the floor, announcing the imminent arrival of an interior designer. Neri walks away with authority, declaring that she will personally manage the Winchester household finances from this moment on. Determination fills Niari's gaze as she vows to prevent Madame Farede from exerting any further malicious influence. Narration explains how Madame Farede became the de facto master, controlling everything since the previous countess passed away. In the library, Niari carefully examines Danielle's daily schedule, intent on uncovering the head maid's hidden plots. Niari realizes the girl's schedule was deliberately arranged to ensure she never crosses paths with the Count. She understands that the Count remains unaware of Danielle's treatment because their lives have been kept strictly separate. Niari acknowledges the red-haired maid's report, stating she now fully understands the gravity of the situation. A magnificent spread of cakes, pies, and tea is prepared for a special meal. With a joyful expression, Niari asks a wide-eyed Danielle if the impressive feast looks delicious to her. Danielle stares at the food with intense concentration, looking almost stunned by the kindness and the grand meal. A close-up shows Danielle's small hands struggling to navigate the oversized knife and fork as she tries to eat. Nyari watches her with a tender, motherly smile, relieved to see the girl finally acting like a normal child. A sudden stillness falls as Danielle freezes mid-bite, her blue eyes wide with an expression of startled surprise. Nyari encourages Danielle to eat as much as she likes, happy to see the young girl enjoying her food. A soft plop sounds as a cherry tomato slips from the fork, rolling across the floor and staining everything. Danielle gasps in horror as her new clothes are stained, her face reflecting a deep, ingrained fear of making mistakes. Nyari reaches out to comfort the trembling child, shocked by the sheer intensity of the little girl's panic. When Nyari questions her fear, Danielle reveals she is terrified of the consequences of ruining her fine new outfit. An overhead view of the grand table highlights the lonely and frightened child sitting amidst the symbols of luxury. Danielle reveals the staff's cruelty, admitting they hate dressing her and complain about having to do her laundry. Nyari's expression turns dark with a cold, simmering fury as she hears about the servants' verbal abuse and laziness. She reflects on the systemic torment Danielle has endured, her anger at the household staff reaching a breaking point. Danielle looks up with tearful blue eyes and softly agrees to stay for the surprise Nyari has planned. Nyari apologizes for the fright, explaining that her only intent was to surprise Danielle with a beautiful new room. Gazing at the young girl with a mixture of heartbreak and resolve, Nyari vows to change everything for her. Nyari concludes that the entire household staff, not just a few maids, has been complicit in Danielle's mistreatment. A haunting memory shows Danielle alone in the rain, proving the staff followed Madame Ferrette's lead in neglecting her. She clenches her teeth with a sharp creak, struggling to maintain her composure for Danielle's sake despite her rage. Forcing a gentle smile, Nyari suppresses her anger to ensure the little girl feels safe and loved during dinner. Nyari takes Danielle's hands in hers, making a silent and solemn promise to be the mother the girl deserves. Nyari mentions a bet, her golden eyes sparkling with the brilliance of a sudden and clever new plan. Danielle looks up with a curious and mesmerized expression, captured by Nyari's sudden shift in mood and confidence. Nyari explains she needs to step away for a short while, asking the girl if she will be all right alone. With a mysterious but reassuring smile, Nyari confirms Danielle's thoughts as she prepares to take drastic action. Nyari stands with her arms crossed, authoritatively facing a large gathering of the entire household staff in the hall. Madame Ferrette claims everyone has gathered, but Nyari notes 10 people are missing based on the official roster. Ferrette blames a cold, but Nyari immediately realizes the head maid is pocketing wages for non-existent ghost employees. With a commanding gesture, Nyari authoritatively announces that every single servant in the estate is fired as of today. A collective cry of shock erupts from the assembly as the servants react in utter disbelief to their dismissal. Nyari notes that May is the only one uncorrupted, having not been at the estate long enough to be tainted. Madame Ferrette demands an explanation, while a shocked maid behind her wonders if the head maid agreed to this. Ferrette protests the dismissal of dedicated staff, but Nyari remains cold and unyielding, questioning the truth of their dedication. Nyari reflects on the systemic neglect Danielle suffered, noting that the reason for her harsh actions is undeniable. Nyari recalls how the staff mistreated the child, even displacing her from her own room, leaving Danielle feeling unwanted. A crying Danielle clings to her doll, while Nyari sternly declares she has no use for incompetent staff. Gary! Madame Ferrette grits her teeth in a fit of silent rage, her face twisted with mounting frustration. Madame Ferrette smugly offers her resignation, unaware that Nyari is secretly delighted to be rid of her influence. Nyari calmly accepts the resignation, but prepares to deliver a final, crushing condition to the departing head maid. Lord Winchester remains composed, his sharp features framed by symbolic white roses as he observes the unfolding confrontation. Sitting at his desk, the black-haired Count focuses on his work, maintaining an air of stoic authority. Faraday presents a record of Near's recent spending to the Count, attempting to frame her as financially reckless. Neary notes the headmaid's hypocrisy, realizing Faraday only keeps meticulous records when trying to sabotage someone. Faraday warns the Count that the family fortune is at risk if Niari continues her current path. Gesturing dramatically, Faraday complains that Niari has dismissed nearly every servant in the household without a valid reason. Faraday looks at Niari with feigned disbelief, questioning if her decision to fire everyone is far too cruel. Clinging to her chest, Faraday laments the destruction of the estate she supposedly cherished for the late Countess. Neary stands her ground with crossed arms, waiting patiently for Lord Winchester to give his final verdict. Lord Winchester sits silently with his hands folded, weighing the arguments presented by his wife and his maid. Neary feels a sense of anticipation, certain that the Count is about to ask a pivotal question. The Count questions the purpose of the purchases and the reason for the mass dismissal of the servants. A vision of Danielle being ignored by cold-hearted servants serves as the grim justification for Niari's radical changes. Neary explains that the staff failed their most basic duty by treating a young child with such coldness. Neary directly accuses Madame Faraday of being the mastermind behind the systemic neglect of the young lady. Defensively, Faraday argues that she was merely following the strict policies established by the previous Countess. Faraday pleads with the Count, claiming that the household was perfectly fine until Nerissa's arrival caused chaos. Shouting with indignation, Faraday labels Niari as the true problem for wasting money and firing innocent workers. A heavy silence fills the library as the Count looks between the two women, his expression unreadable. Faraday gestures wildly at the Count, demanding to know how he can allow such a cruel decision to stand. Sue, Lord Winchester raises a single finger to silence the room, preparing to issue his official command. A decisive statement echoes through the room, confirming that Niari is the sole mistress of the Winchester estate. Madame Faraday freezes in total shock, her eyes wide as she realizes she has lost her leverage. Lord Winchester looks directly at Niari and declares his absolute trust in her, causing flowers to bloom around her. The Count authorizes a severance payment for the staff, signaling the final end of their employment. Faraday spitefully thinks Niari manipulated the Count, but quickly plots to steal the severance pay of ghost employees. Niari interrupts with a pleasant smile, ready to dismantle Faraday's secret plan for a final payout. Neary points out that once they recalculate the books, the amount Faraday embezzled likely exceeds her severance pay. Neary beams with a radiant, victorious expression, knowing she has successfully cornered the corrupt headmaid. Kya! Faraday's hand trembles with suppressed fury as she realizes her financial schemes have been completely exposed. Faraday storms out of the library, shouting a final, bitter warning that they will regret this decision. Neary and Lord Winchester stand together in the quiet office, the immediate threat to the household finally removed. The scene shifts to the tranquil castle exterior under the light of a glowing full moon. Wearing a pink nightgown, Niari carries a tea set with a cheerful and purposeful smile. Neary enters the bedroom and asks the Count a question, surprising him during his late-night hours. Kopo Kopo. Purple lavender tea flows into a cup as Niari explains its benefits for treating his insomnia. Kata. Lord Winchester stares down at the steaming tea, his expression softening with a hint of melancholy. Seeing his hesitation, Niari quickly assures him he doesn't have to drink it if he'd prefer wine. Lord Winchester offers a rare, gentle smile as he prepares to enjoy the thoughtful gift from his wife. Neary is momentarily stunned into silence by the unexpected warmth in the Count's handsome face. Neary admits she appreciates his trust, but her expression turns serious as she prepares to address a deeper issue. Neri bluntly informs Lord Winchester that he is also responsible for the neglect that occurred under his roof. A chibi Lord Winchester looks utterly bewildered, his head tilted in complete shock at her direct accusation. Standing tall, Nyari explains that a household naturally functions according to the behavior and oversight of its master. Looking out at the immaculate grounds, Nyari notes the overgrown garden and the staff's failure to provide proper meals for Danielle. Clutching her pink plush, Danielle stares in awe at a towering stand filled with elegant pastries and sweet treats. Facing the household staff, Nyari points out to Lord Winchester that the servant's neglect merely mirrors his own lack of interest. Lord Winchester's sudden proximity leaves Nyari flustered as she struggles to maintain her composure during their intense conversation. Standing in the middle of the dark bedroom, Nyari asks the Count what specific actions he plans to take now. With a soft smile, Nyari playfully questions Lord Winchester about whether he has ever experienced the flutter of a crush. Nyari emphasizes her point with a raised finger, explaining the feeling of being captivated by someone special to him. Flowers bloom around them as the conversation turns intimate, hinting at the budding connection between the couple. Lord Winchester leans in close, his voice low as he asks if her description was actually about her feelings for him. Imagining a more romantic version of herself, Nyari reflects on the unexpected direction their late-night talk has taken. Turning away in a panic, Nyari realizes with a blush that she accidentally confessed her own feelings while trying to explain. Nyari looks stunned as the Count clarifies that her previous words were directed toward her, not Danielle. In a moment of adorable confusion, the Chibi Count explains he was talking about Danielle, making Nyari feel utterly embarrassed. A rare, genuine smile graces Lord Winchester's face as he watches Nyari, his expression softened by the light of the moon. Thump, thump! Nyari's heart races uncontrollably as she realizes the Count's gentle smile is far more dangerous than his cold glares. Quickly changing the subject, Nyari explains that Danielle is staying in a guest room while her new bedroom is being prepared. Nyari walks through the silent, dark hallway alone, her mind swirling with the weight of the night's revelations. Clinging to her chest, Nyari tries to calm her pounding heart as she struggles to forget the Count's handsome, smiling face. Under the bright sun, a cheerful purple-haired girl celebrates in front of the grand and sprawling Winchester Castle. Nyari feels a wave of immense relief seeing Danielle dancing happily in a room that finally looks like a child's sanctuary. Danielle joyfully presents her doll to Nyari, clearly thriving in the new, loving environment her stepmother has created. Nefiri closes her eyes with a serene smile, deeply satisfied that her efforts to change Danielle's life are finally working. Reflecting on Danielle's youth, Nyari feels a pang of sympathy for the heavy burdens the young girl has been forced to carry. Nyari faces a group of elegantly dressed noblewomen, preparing herself for the social intricacies of a formal tea party. A nervous sweat breaks across Nyari's brow as she faces the judgmental gazes of the high society ladies. Sitting at a sunlit table, Nyari engages in a tense conversation with her sister-in-law, Sierra, regarding the household's management. Nyari laughs off a suggestion with a bright smile, though her internal tension remains visible in her guarded expression. Sierra leans in urgently, explaining her desperate need to hire competent staff after a series of disastrous previous employees. Sierra offers a polite and polished smile, hiding her frustrations behind the mask of a refined noblewoman. The ladies discuss the proper routine for children, suggesting that Danielle needs at least 10 hours of sleep. Nyari listens thoughtfully to the advice, carefully navigating the social minefield of noble motherhood and household expectations. The grand parlor is filled with the soft clink of china as the 5 women gather for their afternoon tea. Nyari politely promises to consider their recommendations, acknowledging the difficulty of finding truly reliable people for the estate. One noblewoman recounts a horror story about a former servant who stole from her and caused endless trouble. Nyari reflects on how universal the struggle for good help is, finding some comfort in their shared complaints. The conversation shifts toward Miss Reynolds' excellent reputation, with the ladies debating how to secure her highly sought-after services. Over slices of white cake, a shocking rumor surfaces about a tutor who suffered a broken leg during their employment. Sierra questions the strange rumors surrounding the Aitre family's tutor, her curiosity piqued by the bizarre stories. A hush falls over the room as a woman in a dramatic red gown makes a grand and imposing entrance. Nearest expression turns to one of cold recognition as she spots the woman she knows from the novel's original plot. Countess Aitre stands framed by roses, her beautiful but sharp features radiating an aura of cold, calculating power. Nyari recalls the novel's lore, identifying the Countess as a cruel woman who once harassed Danielle out of pure spite. A memory of a past ball flashes through Nyari's mind, confirming the dark rumors about the Countess's brutal treatment of staff. Observing the Countess's arrival, Nyari notes the hypocritical way she demands hard work while showing no kindness. Countess Aitre towers over the other women, her posture exuding a sense of haughty superiority and arrogance. Aitre mocks Nyari's efforts, cruelly stating that there is no benefit to pretending to care for a frog's child. Looking at Aitre's cold smile, Nyari finally understands the source of the toxicity that plagued Danielle's early life. The Countess boldly spreads a malicious rumor, questioning whether Danielle is even Lord Winchester's biological child. Nyari looks at the assembly with disdain, noting that Danielle's striking blue eyes are the ultimate proof of her true lineage. As the tea party ends, Aitre dismissively admits she has never bothered to actually see the child she is insulting. Nyari sits alone on an ornate couch, her expression caught between quiet surprise and a deepening sense of worry. Her hands clutch her skirts in agitation as she admits her ignorance regarding the rumors circulating about the estate. At the tea party, a guest whispers a cruel rumor, leaving Nyari frustrated by the lack of defensive information. The black-haired noblewoman recounts a romantic battlefield legend, but Nyari is determined to silence these unfounded, ridiculous stories. Nyari stands before a small, purple-haired girl clutching a plushie, preparing to face the day's next social challenge. Countess Aitre looms over Nyari with a cold, predatory smile that sends a visible chill through the room. A lavish spread of tiered cakes and tea stands ready, yet the atmosphere remains thick with unspoken hostility. Nyari beams with pride, openly declaring her genuine love and devotion to Danielle before the judgmental noblewomen. Aitre scoffs at the sentiment, leaning in to mock the very idea of a stepmother loving her predecessor's child. Nyari remains undeterred, blossoming with joy as she reaffirms that Danielle is a truly lovable and precious child. Seeking support, Nyari turns to the woman with the purple fan, who responds with a startled, wide-eyed look. Aitre towers over the table, dismissing the conversation as a typical motherly exchange, while Nyari maintains a polite facade. Nyari takes the offensive, pointedly asking about a tutor's injury while observing the noblewoman's sudden, nervous shift. A forced laugh escapes Aitre as she dismissively tells Nyari there is no reason to worry about such trifles. The noblewoman reveals that Aitre's own son caused the tutor's broken leg, causing a sudden, sharp intake of breath. Countess Aitre's face twists into a mask of pure, unadulterated rage as her family's dark secrets are exposed. Shouting with indignation, the Countess warns Nyari to stay out of her business, her composure completely shattered by the accusation. Surrounded by blooming flowers, a radiant Nyari watches as her rival loses control of the narrative and the room. Claiming urgent business, Aitre gathers her skirts and flees the parlor, leaving a trail of stunned silence behind her. A heavy thud echoes through the room as the door slams, signaling the Countess's final humiliating exit. Under the glow of a full moon, Niera's voice narrates the day's chaotic events back at the Winchester estate. Neri and the Count sit together in the quiet night, the tension of the tea party slowly fading away. Lord Winchester labels Aitre an incredibly rude person, gently advising his wife to forget the unpleasant encounter entirely. A chibi Winchester tilts his head in confusion, wondering if his wife is actually offering him genuine sympathy. Neri reflects on the situation, feeling a lingering sense of frustration that she couldn't defend Danielle more effectively. Taking a deep breath, Neri finally asks the forbidden question: who is the woman that gave birth to Danielle? The Count's eyes turn icy as he coldly questions whether he has any real obligation to answer her. Neri freezes, shocked by the sudden wall of frost Lord Winchester has erected between them in the dark room. An oppressive chill fills the air as Neri realizes she has crossed a line into a very dark memory. She clutches her chest, her heart heavy with the realization that she may have made a terrible, irreversible mistake. The heavy silence is broken as Winchester acknowledges her apology, though the mood remains somber and distant. Lord Winchester stands to leave, brusquely ordering Neri to get some rest for the early schedule they face tomorrow. A bright new morning dawns as a carriage waits, though Neri remains puzzled about the day's mysterious plans. Danielle appears in a stunning red and white dress, looking like a little doll as she waits for her parents. Dressed in matching formal attire, Neri and the Count prepare to take Danielle on her first official family outing. Danielle looks up at Neri with wide, hopeful blue eyes, clutching her pink plushie tightly against her chest. Neri kneels to Danielle's level, her smile warm as they both don their matching, elegant red sun hats. Wide-eyed with disbelief, Danielle asks for confirmation, and Neri answers with a cheerful, encouraging nod of her head. Lord Winchester stands nearby, his expression unreadable as he observes the growing bond between his wife and daughter. The family sits down to a lavish lunch, though the vast distance between them makes the meal feel suffocating. A beautifully prepared fish dish sits before them, yet the group's internal tension ruins the popular restaurant's charm. Neri looks on sadly, noting the heavy atmosphere and the painful, silent chasm separating the Count from his child. Danielle sits perfectly still, her fork hovering midair as she navigates the crushing pressure of her father's stoic presence. Neri watches the Count, wishing he would take the initiative to bridge the emotional gap with his daughter. Lord Winchester remains stubbornly silent, looking every bit as awkward and uncertain as the young girl sitting across from him. Neri stares down at her plate, determined to find a way to make this family outing a success despite the tension. The memory of the Count's cold, midnight gaze haunts her, making it difficult to find the right words. The scene shifts to a grand puppet show arena, where the family hopes to find some much-needed entertainment. Danielle hesitantly asks if she can sit in the front row, her voice small and filled with nervous anticipation. Thump, thump. Danielle's heart races with anxiety as she waits to see if her simple request will be granted. Danielle's heart races with nervous anticipation as she stands before the empty front row of the puppet theater. Lord Winchester suggests they all go together, his stoic demeanor softening slightly as they prepare for the show. Neri thoughtfully considers the impact of their seating choice, worrying about blocking the view for other small children. Danielle brightly reassures her parents that she will be perfectly fine, her small voice filled with sweet consideration. To the sound of quick, rhythmic pattering sounding, Danielle joyfully rushes toward the stage while her parents follow closely. Overwhelmed by Danielle's pure cuteness, Neri decided they should sit in the back row to be more considerate. A cheerful rabbit puppet appears under a bright spotlight, energetically greeting the audience as the puppet show begins. The festive theater is filled with sounds of joyful cheering as Neri and the Count take their seats together. A clown puppet joins the act, skillfully juggling plates amidst a shower of colorful confetti and stage lights. Neri recalls a memory of Lord Winchester's rare, warm smile, hoping they can truly become closer as a family. Sitting in the dim light of the theater, Neri appears lost in a moment of quiet, heavy introspection. The performance continues as a clever monkey puppet makes its debut, adding more charm and excitement to the show. The rabbit puppet pours its heart into the performance, expressing a desperate, endearing desire to make friends with everyone. Neri unexpectedly bursts into tears, moved by the rabbit puppet's emotional struggle during the children's theater production. The ringmaster takes the stage, enthusiastically urging the entire audience to cheer for the hard-working rabbit puppet. Caught in the moment, Neri stands and loudly shouts her encouragement for the rabbit puppet, shocking Lord Winchester. With tears in her eyes, Neri passionately cheers, deeply acknowledging the immense effort the small puppet is putting forth. The ringmaster shouts with delight as the performance concludes successfully, energized by the audience's surprisingly passionate and loud support. A sudden, firm grip sounding, Neri clutches her dress in shame, mortified by her own public and emotional outburst. As the theater empties, Neri sits alone, her exhaustion and embarrassment growing as she wonders where the count went. She frets over her behavior, certain that Lord Winchester now views her as an unrefined weirdo lacking proper decorum. A firm step sounding, the Count returns and calls out to Lady Neri, startling her from her worried thoughts. Lord Winchester stands tall before her, his posture rigid and his expression unreadable after his sudden and mysterious departure. A quick start sounding, Neri begins to apologize for her earlier conduct, her face flushing with deep, visible embarrassment. The Count surprises her by extending a brown rabbit plushie, framed by a soft, romantic aura of blooming roses. Neri asks for clarification, and Winchester bluntly confirms that the gift is, in fact, a simple stuffed rabbit. The black-haired man notes how intently she watched the show, his blue eyes showing a hint of observant concern. Neri's heart skips as she wonders if he was actually watching her reactions instead of the puppet performance. Lord Winchester admits the previous night's tension has been weighing on his mind, causing him to hesitate until now. Neri realizes he wasn't trying to be cold or dismissive, but was struggling to bridge the gap between them. Stunned, Neri gazes at him as a warm, sparkling light fills the frame, her heart swelling with newfound hope. The Count looks at her with a gentle, sincere gaze, his usual icy facade melting into something softer and kinder. Wait a moment. Neri's eyes widen as she anticipates what the usually stoic Lord Winchester might say to her. Winchester holds the brown rabbit plushie out once more, a faint blush coloring his cheeks as he looks away. Neri is deeply moved, realizing he remembered her previous words and was genuinely trying to apply her advice today. Clasping the rabbit plushie, Neri reflects on how the legendary Sword Emperor is actually quite clumsy and endearing. Danielle observes the intimate moment from a distance, her golden hair framed by the soft light of the theater. Danielle excitedly declares how much fun the puppet show was, her small face radiating pure and unadulterated childish joy. Neri smiles warmly as Danielle spots the new stuffed rabbit, curious if her mother truly likes her new gift. Winchester offers Danielle a gift too, but she happily declines, satisfied with her own beloved pink plushie, Usaton. Lord Winchester's expression becomes serious as he interrupts, stating he has a formal proposal he would like to make. Standing tall in the parlor, the Count reiterates his intent to propose something important to his wife and daughter. Miri and Danielle look up in wide-eyed surprise, wondering what unexpected proposal the usually stoic man has in mind. In a chibi-style thought bubble, the Count suggests they head home soon, his usual sternness replaced by adorable confusion. Neri and Danielle exchange a bewildered, chibi look, their expressions mirroring each other's surprise and shared amusement. As the carriage travels into the sunset, the Count reflects on how spending time with Neri brings new experiences. Lord Winchester offers a rare, genuine smile, his features softening as he acknowledges the positive change in his life. Neri watches him, thinking that while he is still a bit awkward, their family is finally starting to heal. Gazing out the carriage window, Neri suggests they all go out together again, her heart full of newfound happiness. Looking back at his wife and daughter, Lord Winchester warmly asks if the two of them have finally reconciled. Danielle happily clutches her new brown rabbit plushie, her eyes closed in a content, peaceful smile. Neri dismisses the idea of a conflict, reassuring the Count that their relationship is perfectly fine. A new tutor named Miss Reynolds is introduced at the Grand Mansion, receiving a very warm welcome. Ms. Reynolds, a kind-looking woman with glasses and brown hair, is hired despite her previous leg injury. Neri worries about Countess Ethery's inevitable fury once she learns about the new hiring arrangement. Neri and the injured Miss Reynolds stand before Danielle, who looks up at her new tutor with curiosity. Danielle holds her beloved pink plushie, Usatan, close to her chest while observing the newcomers. Neri explains Ms. Reynolds' leg injury, asking Danielle if she is willing to help her new tutor. Miss Reynolds smiles brightly, her heart filled with joy as she prepares to begin her new teaching role. Danielle stands silently, her wide blue eyes fixed on the kind woman standing before her. Looking down pensively, Danielle hesitantly agrees to consider the new arrangement, her voice trailing off. Neri watches Danielle's gloomy expression, wondering if the young girl is simply nervous about meeting someone new. The scene shifts as the warm glow of the setting sun filters through the ornate mansion windows. Brilliant sunlight spills across the hallway, marking the passage of time within the peaceful estate. Neri and Miss Reynolds discuss Danielle's progress, concluding that a slow and patient approach is best. Miss Reynolds praises Danielle's intellect, noting that the young girl understood every lesson perfectly. Neri thanks the tutor through the window, planning to talk to Danielle about exploring her interests further. Miss Reynolds prepares to depart in a carriage, leaving Neri to reflect on the day's successful lessons. Surrounded by yellow flowers, Ms. Reynolds smiles warmly as she bids farewell after a productive day. A close-up reveals Neri's elegant green dress adorned with a sparkling green jewel and white ribbon. To the sound of a rhythmic rattling sounding, the carriage pulls away through the mansion's sun-drenched gardens. Neri contemplates her strategy, deciding to provide Danielle with a list of options for her future activities. Fresh yellow flowers sit in a crystal vase, brightening the room as the sun begins to set. Neri admits she originally felt too awkward to attend the social gathering, but she eventually changed her mind. Several noble women gather for tea, engaging in lively conversation as Neri sits quietly among them. Danielle focuses intently on her embroidery, practicing a craft that helps build both manual dexterity and patience. Neri expresses concern about the safety of using needles, her finger resting thoughtfully against her lip. Danielle joyfully jumps rope outdoors, demonstrating how physical education builds stamina and helps her sleep soundly. Recalling Miss Reynolds' leg injury, Neri realizes that certain physical activities might be difficult for the tutor. Imagining Danielle's potential, the ladies suggest both music and ballet as sophisticated pursuits for the young girl. The noble women continue their discussion, suggesting that Danielle should be allowed to try a variety of different activities. To the sound of a sharp twitch sounding, Neri reacts to a mocking comment about her supposed greed. The red-haired Countess Ethery makes a dramatic entrance, her presence marked by a series of sharp thumping sounds. Countess Ethery rudely accuses Neri of poaching tutors, her voice dripping with condescension and open hostility. Neri stands her ground, calmly explaining that Miss Reynolds chose to join their household of her own free will. Nyari exposes the truth about Miss Reynolds' difficult past employment, causing the other noblewomen to gasp in shock. The noblewomen confirm the rumors regarding the injury caused by the heir of the Ethery family, unsettling the Countess. Countess Ethery demands the tutor's return, claiming her son refuses to study with anyone else despite his past behavior. Nyari retorts with a sharp remark about the Countess's inability to find another teacher for her unteachable son. To the sound of a sharp slap sounding, Countess Ethery raises her hand in rage, but a maid's arrival interrupts. A maid frantically announces that one of the children has been injured, instantly halting the tense confrontation. Neera's face pales with shock and fear as she urgently asks who among the children was hurt. To the sound of a loud bang sounding, Nyari bursts through the doors, desperately calling out Danielle's name. Danielle looks up with tear-filled eyes, her expression one of utter heartbreak and silent, lingering pain. Nyari rushes to Danielle's side, comforting her as a red-haired boy stands nearby with a defiant look. Nyari offers gentle words of comfort to the weeping Danielle, her expression full of maternal love and concern. Danielle points an accusing finger at the red-haired boy, Ansho, as she tearfully reveals what happened. Danielle sobbed that Ansho shoved her, apologizing through her tears as the emotional weight of the encounter hit. To the sound of a sharp flinch sounding, Ansho reacts as Nyari sternly lectures him on taking things from others. Nyari shields Danielle from Countess Ethery's shouting, insisting that the children be allowed to speak their truth first. Nyari stands her ground, suggesting they listen to both children's sides of the story before passing final judgment. A heavy tension fills the parlor as the adults wait for the young, red-haired boy to speak his piece. Ansho shouts defiantly, pointing a finger at Danielle while his mother stands behind him in clear, unwavering support. Nyari firmly points out that Danielle had already expressed her refusal, making the boy's aggressive persistence completely inexcusable. Towering over the young boy, Nyari maintains a stern and unyielding presence that demands immediate accountability for his actions. Nyari brings up Ansho's past cruelty toward a tutor, her calm voice carrying a sharp and dangerous edge. Memories of the injured tutor resurface as Ansho recoils in shock, his face pale with sudden, visible fear. Ansho frantically denies his past behavior while Nyari mocks the idea that his previous victim simply fell by accident. Shuffling his feet nervously, Ansho struggles to find a believable lie as his composure begins to crumble. Countess Ethery snaps at Nyari, loudly accusing her of threatening a child to hide her own son's misdeeds. Nyari highlights the Countess's hypocrisy as Ansho's bitter tears fall, further fueling the red-haired woman's growing rage. The surrounding children watch in silent horror as Nyari challenges the Countess's intent to strike her in public. To the sound of a sudden halt sounding, the Countess's hand stops midair, her face contorted with frustration. Nyari delivers a scathing rebuke, shaming the Countess for her complete lack of decorum in front of the children. Dragging her sobbing son along, Countess Ethery makes a hasty and humiliating retreat from the mansion's tense garden. Watching them depart, Nyari scoffs at the woman's rudeness, finally finding a moment of hard-won peace. To the sound of a soft rustle sounding, Danielle clings to Nyari, expressing her deep and heartfelt gratitude. Danielle's eyes shimmer with pure adoration as she gazes up at the woman who bravely defended her honor. Night falls over the grand estate as a voice reflects on the difficult, emotional weight of the day's events. Inside the dim mansion, Lord Winchester asks Nyari for an update on Danielle's minor injuries following the scuffle. Nyari reassures him about their daughter, but she is startled when the Count's concern shifts entirely toward her. With a steady and piercing gaze, Lord Winchester clarifies that he is actually worried about Neris's own well-being. To the sound of a soft touch sounding, the Count gently brushes a strand of hair from Neris's face. Neris's heart races as a deep blush spreads across her cheeks, caught completely off guard by his tenderness. Stuttering and wide-eyed, Nyari insists she is perfectly fine, though her visible embarrassment betrays her true, fluttering feelings. Fanning herself frantically, Nyari blames the heat of the night to cover up the intensity of her racing heart. She suggests putting some distance between them, desperately trying to regain her composure as her pulse continues to quicken. Later that night, Nyari lies awake, struggling to sleep as the strange warmth of his touch lingers on. A new day begins with a focus on education as Danielle examines various documents for her upcoming lessons. The family enjoys a peaceful picnic under the shade of a large tree, basked in golden afternoon light. To the sound of a rhythmic scratching sounding, Danielle focuses intently on sketching on a small canvas. Neri watches her daughter in a cute chibi style, wondering if the young girl has discovered a hidden talent. Danielle looks up with a look of pure wonder, ready to reveal the progress of her artistic work. Pointing toward a tray of colorful pencils, Danielle warmly invites her mother to join her in the drawing session. Clasping her hands happily, Chibi Nyari agrees to participate, eager to spend more quality time together outdoors. Neri thinks back to her botany electives, remembering her past love for creating detailed and accurate plant illustrations. Golden marigolds sway in the breeze as Nyari reflects on her skill in drawing intricate and beautiful biological sketches. Completely absorbed in the task, Nyari sketches with focused intent as the sun begins its slow, beautiful descent. Alois calls out Lord Winchester as the Count suddenly appears against the backdrop of a fiery sunset. The Count explains he stopped by briefly to change before departing for an urgent Imperial Palace summons. Neri looks up from her drawing, asking if there is anything he wishes to discuss before he heads out. A heavy, expectant silence falls between the husband and wife as they stand together in the sun-drenched garden. Lord Winchester remains stoic, his gaze fixed on his family as the evening light paints the peaceful scene gold. Neri and Danielle exchange a look of adorable chibi confusion, wondering why the usually stoic Count is being quiet. A sharp realization hits as Nyari notes the strange time of day despite the overly dramatic sunset lighting. Neri explains they were drawing, her heart wishing she could help the awkward man express himself more freely. Winchester offers a soft, rare smile, apologizing for potentially interrupting their peaceful afternoon and fun activities. In a shy chibi pose, Danielle hides her face while her mother speaks warmly on her behalf. Neri excitedly suggests Danielle show her father the lovely and wonderful picture she worked so hard on. To the sound of a dark, ominous rumble sounding, Danielle reveals a terrifyingly creepy rabbit drawing that shocks everyone. Neri's silhouette trembles with anxiety as she urges Lord Winchester to quickly praise Danielle's unique rabbit drawing. Lord Winchester stares blankly at the drawing, logically deducing it must be a rabbit because it has 4 legs. Danielle stares forward with large, vacant eyes, her mind seemingly elsewhere as the awkward silence stretches on. Neri enthusiastically tries to bridge the gap, praising Danielle's drawing skills to a skeptical and stoic Lord Winchester. Nyari bashfully admits her own drawing is nothing special, her hand raised to her cheek in modest embarrassment. A close-up reveals Neris' incredibly detailed botanical sketch of marigolds, showcasing her impressive and refined artistic talent. The atmosphere glows with appreciation as a voice remarks on how exceptionally gifted Nyari is at drawing. Danielle and Lord Winchester both look on in stunned silence, clearly impressed by the unexpected beauty of Nyari's artwork. Neri explains the symbolic meaning of marigolds, her voice soft as the golden afternoon light fades around them. Lord Winchester watches Nyari with his subtle, tender expression, his usual coldness melting away in the warm glow. As the sun sets, Lord Winchester explains he must soon head to the Imperial Palace for a summon. Dressed in his formal finery, the Count looks back one last time before departing for his urgent meeting. Night falls on the mansion as Nyeri receives a shocking message that she has also been summoned. Standing before the dark silhouette of the estate, Nyari questions why the imperial palace would call for her. Inside their bedroom, Nyari discusses the summons with Lord Winchester, her face reflecting her deep confusion and anxiety. Nyeri wonders why the imperial princess would specifically want to see her, her mind racing with various uncertain possibilities. Lord Winchester looks at her with a serious gaze, preparing to explain the potential reason behind the high-stakes invitation. Neris Chibi self-panics, imagining their scandalous love marriage is the primary reason for the palace's sudden interest. Nervous about the meeting, Nyari considers her wardrobe, realizing she will need to purchase a suitable new dress. The couple travels through the sunny woods in a grand carriage, heading toward their appointment at the imperial palace. Nyari worries her elegant gown might be too flashy, despite her sister-in-law Sierra's advice to dress up significantly. Seated in the carriage, Nyari mentally rehearses being a happy wife to maintain their image as a perfect couple. Lord Winchester sits stoically across from her, his formal attire making him look every bit the powerful, black-haired count. Nyari notices his intense gaze, wondering if he is simply checking on her or feeling the same social pressure. Nyari asks if her outfit is too extravagant, but her husband offers a brief and quiet denial of her fears. Lord Winchester hides his face behind his hand, a deep blush spreading as he admires how beautiful Nyari looks. Nyari blushes brightly in return, her heart racing as she registers the unexpected intensity of his quiet, lingering gaze. At the banquet, a guest mentions the Count's likely victory in a sword tournament while cutting into their meal. The royal family and the Winchesters sit around a grand table, emphasizing the formal and high-stakes imperial dining arrangement. Nyari listens to the conversation with a focused expression, carefully navigating the sophisticated and tense atmosphere of the banquet. The Emperor and Empress share a friendly exchange, appearing surprisingly kind and welcoming to the nervous, red-haired Nyari. A pink-haired princess remarks on the delicious food, turning to engage Nyari in the polite and formal social conversation. Closing her eyes in delight, the princess savors the meal, her relaxed demeanor helping to ease Neris's initial fears. Nyari laughs softly into her hand, finding herself charmed by the princess's surprisingly approachable and warm personality. The princess notes that talking with Nyari puts her at ease, her expression full of genuine kindness and appreciation. Nyari smiles brightly, relieved to find that the dreaded imperial meeting is going much better than she had anticipated. A sudden exclamation catches the table's attention as the conversation takes a turn toward the couple's personal relationship. Nyari asks if she said something wrong, her expression shifting to one of wide-eyed concern and sudden social panic. Lord Winchester bluntly confirms her mistake, while Nyari looks distraught, realizing her honesty might have caused a misunderstanding. The pink-haired princess looks on in wide-eyed shock, her mouth agape as she learns about their distant relationship. A heavy, awkward silence falls over the opulent dining room, highlighting the disconnect between the couple and imperial expectations. Nyari and Lord Winchester appear as tiny chibis, looking completely out of place as the nobles stare at them. The princess imagines the Count using sugary pet names like Baby Angel, her own romantic fantasies clouding her judgment. Nyari leans back with a strained, nervous smile as the princess continues to project her unrealistic romantic ideas. Neris chibi self weeps, lamenting how using formal titles like Lady Nyari makes them seem way too distant. An older noblewoman tries to calm the princess down, offering an apologetic smile to the visibly flustered Nyari. Nyari realizes the princess has a completely distorted view of love, likely caused by reading too many romance novels. Nyari smiles through her inner turmoil as the princess continues to gush about their status as a perfect couple. Night settles over the city as the carriage departs, Nyari sighing as she reflects on the night's strange events. Turning to Lord Winchester, Nayuri asks if all married couples actually use embarrassing pet names as the princess suggested. Lord Winchester's gloved hand rests on his knee as he remains deep in his private, unspoken thoughts. Wearing a faint, rare smile, Lord Winchester looks ahead, his usual coldness replaced by a quiet, contented warmth. Nearest's cheeks flush a deep red, her gaze shifting away as she processes the surprisingly tender atmosphere. Beside the grand carriage wheels, Lord Winchester's inner monologue continues as they travel through the quiet night. Neri admits to herself that she is too embarrassed to be honest about her growing, complicated feelings. Seated across from her husband, Nyari realizes she cannot simply claim to want nothing in this delicate situation. Her heart fluttering, Nyari smiles softly while resting her face in her hands, lost in a happy daydream. Lord Winchester watches his wife with a gentle, lingering gaze, his expression softening more than ever before. Breaking the silence, Nyari asks if she may spend the night sleeping alongside her beloved daughter, Danielle. Nyari beams with joy, her eyes sparkling with pure delight at the thought of comforting her young child. Shifting to a new, rainy day, Nyari stands by a grand window in her elegant lilac gown. The sound of rain pitter-pattering against the glass echoes Nira's worry as she observes the gray morning sky. To a sudden splashing sound, Neri wonders if Lord Winchester remembered his umbrella amidst the downpour. Neri offers a bright, cheerful wave, her happy demeanor lighting up the grand and opulent hallway. Clinging to her plush rabbit, Danielle looks up with wide, curious eyes, wondering why she is currently alone. Neri gently explains to her daughter that their expected professor has not yet arrived for the day's lessons. Cupping her chin, Nyari grows concerned, wondering if something unexpected happened to prevent the tutor's arrival. To a soft, rhythmic nodding sounding, Nyari leans down to comfort Danielle, promising to investigate the mysterious delay. Outside, Amei explains that the tutor should have already departed by carriage, increasing the sense of unease. Neri learns that the professor didn't use the family carriage, spotting another vehicle stopped in the distance. A realization strikes as the maid identifies the carriage as belonging to the powerful and prestigious Atri family. Shielded by a dark umbrella, a worried Nyari prepares to confront the truth behind the tutor's sudden disappearance. The red-haired Countess of Atri coldly dismisses Tutor Renaud's broken leg as a mere unavoidable accident. Standing before a family portrait, the Countess reflects on her son Anshu, the supposed pride of their lineage. Surrounded by dark lilies, the Countess spitefully blames Danielle's unknown background for the recent troubles. A somber memory shows Tutor Renaud comforting a young boy, her kindness contrasting with the Countess's harsh words. The Countess recalls her past attempts to shift all blame onto Anshu to protect their family's reputation. Her gaze sharp and unyielding, the Countess declares that this entire matter is one of family pride. Neri faces the formidable Countess in a tense meeting, the atmosphere heavy with unspoken accusations and social pressure. Nyari reminds herself to remain composed and avoid provoking the volatile woman sitting directly across from her. Bound by a sense of duty, Nyari resolves to stay calm for the sake of Danielle and Renaud. Nira's determination flares as she vows to protect the tutor from the Countess's manipulative and cruel schemes. Standing tall, the red-haired Countess bluntly asked Neri what business has brought her to their estate unannounced. Nyari explains her presence, seeking answers regarding why Tutor Renaud failed to appear for Danielle's scheduled lesson. The Countess dismissively claims that Renaud is currently occupied teaching Anshu, her expression full of smug satisfaction. Nyari remains unconvinced, knowing the tutor is too sincere to simply abandon her responsibilities without any prior notice. A close-up of Nira's eye reveals her unwavering focus as she prepares to challenge the Countess's deceptive narrative. The Countess mockingly suggests that the tutor chose Anshu over Danielle simply because it was more beneficial. Niari voices her fears that Reynold might be held in a situation where she cannot speak for herself. She recalls Tutor Reynolds' warm, genuine smile, refusing to believe that such a kind person would act selfishly. Neri stands her ground amidst a backdrop of yellow flowers, her spirit undeterred by the Countess's intimidating presence. Courageously, Neri tells the Countess to stop the charade of pretending to be a kind and loving mother. The Countess remains silent as Niari continues her bold confrontation, the tension in the room reaching a breaking point. As rain falls outside, Niari insists on hearing the truth directly from Tutor Reynolds' own lips. With a piercing green-eyed stare, the Countess finally yields, allowing Niari to meet with the tutor much sooner. Neri and the Countess approach Tutor Reynolds, who sits dejectedly on a sofa with her crutches nearby. Looking down in shame, Tutor Reynolds offers a quiet apology for her absence, her posture reflecting deep distress. The Countess cruelly interrogates Reynolds, suggesting she intentionally ignored Danielle to curry favor with the Atri family. Neri asks the tutor if she is truly staying there by her own choice and from her heart. Neri's determined face reflects in Reynolds' eye as she asserts that the tutor's heart is not for sale. Neri and Tutor Reynolds share a warm memory of teaching young Danielle, their smiles full of genuine happiness. Dejectedly sitting on the sofa, Tutor Reynolds looks down in silence while her crutch rests uselessly against the seat. Framed by dark thorns, Tutor Reynolds insists she must teach young Master Anshu, her expression strained and hollow. Niari stands frozen in shock, her eyes wide as she struggles to reconcile this coldness with the woman she knew. A happy image of the tutor's past smile appears shattered like glass, reflecting Nearest's broken trust in her. Looking at the tutor's bowed head, Niari wonders if every kind moment they shared was merely a calculated lie. The Countess smugly dismisses Reynolds to her class, while the tutor grips her skirts, her body trembling with hidden shame. To a quick GHK sounding, the Countess bites her finger, her eyes gleaming with a disturbing, predatory satisfaction. Two men roughly seize Reynolds as a sudden bang sounding echoes through the room, forcing her away from Neri. Neri realizes with a start that these men are neither common servants nor the estate's official private soldiers. A flash of insight strikes Neri as she finally understands the violent coercion used to keep the tutor imprisoned. Neri confronts the Countess as a man draws his blade, the true danger of the situation finally coming to light. Laughing behind her hand, the Countess warns that even a high-ranking lady might suffer an unfortunate accidental injury. Standing amidst golden flowers, Niari retorts that no child can grow into a good person under such cruel parenting. Enraged by the insult, the red-haired Countess snaps at her men to stop idling and take immediate action. A sharp shink sounding marks the moment a cold blade is pressed against Nearest's throat, drawing a thin line of blood. The heavy doors fly open as Lord Winchester appears, his tall frame and icy blue eyes radiating a lethal, protective fury. Stunned by the sudden intrusion, the Countess gasps and wonders who would dare burst into her private reception room. Lord Winchester steps forward with a cold clang sounding as he prepares to draw his sword against the attackers. Neri looks up with a mixture of terror and overwhelming relief as she realizes her husband has finally arrived. A close-up of Lord Winchester's narrowed eyes reveals a terrifying intensity, his patience completely evaporated by the sight of Niari's blood. From a high vantage point, the room becomes a stage for an impending duel, as Winchester faces the armed man. Drawing his blade with a resonant shing sounding, Lord Winchester declares that he no longer has a choice but to fight. With his sword leveled at the threat, the Count commands the man to step away from his wife immediately. The Countess panics and orders her man to use Niari as a hostage to finish the Count once and for all. With a desperate whoosh sounding, the man raises his weapon high, attempting a heavy strike against the black-haired Count. To a violent clink sounding, Lord Winchester effortlessly parries the blow, his strength far exceeding that of his opponent. The attacker is paralyzed by fear, realizing he is facing a man with overwhelming, monstrous power and absolute composure. Niari watches the struggle, realizing this chaotic moment is her only chance to break free and reach the tutor. A shrill "No!" sounding escapes the Countess as she watches her carefully laid plans crumble under Winchester's blade. Rushing to the tutor's side, Niari offers a reassuring hand and promises that Reynold is finally safe from further harm. Neri turns her gaze back toward the red-haired woman, her expression shifting to one of profound, cold disappointment. Neri reflects on how the Countess believes a family crest and hollow pride are the only sources of human dignity. Cowering and trembling, the Countess listens as Neri declares that trampling others will never lead her to true happiness. Neri clenches her fist, asserting that despite her high birth, the Countess is the one who truly understands nothing of value. Neri speaks of the fundamental rights to love and education, her voice steady and full of unwavering conviction. To a sharp snap sounding, the Countess attempts to point a finger, screaming about the tutor's supposedly humble social station. Screaming insults, the Countess lunges forward to strike the mere tutor for daring to challenge the House of Atri. Neri catches the Countess's wrist midair with a firm grab sounding, preventing the physical assault with surprising strength. Her eyes burning with protective fire, Niari warns that she will never tolerate another insult directed toward her daughter. Tutor Reynold watches with a look of pure astonishment as the power dynamic in the room shifts completely. To a heavy thump sounding, the Countess collapses to her knees, tearfully begging the tutor to stay for her son's sake. Looking down at the sobbing noblewoman, Reynold gently asks the Countess to raise her head and find her composure. Reynold takes the Countess's hands with a soft squeeze, stating she bears no personal hatred toward the young boy. The scene shifts to the brightly lit, elegant hallway, the morning light signaling the end of the long night's tension. The Countess looks up with a desperate, hopeful expression as she listens to Reynold's final and decisive conditions. Neri stands beside Tutor Reynold, offering silent support as the brown-haired woman finally finds her voice and her strength. Reynold asserts her right to choose her own teaching environment, reclaiming her dignity from the ruins of the Countess's pride. Niari touches her chest, her heart swelling with pride at the tutor's courage to stand up for her own self-worth. A warm flashback shows a joyful dinner, reminding Niari that true dignity comes from the love shared between family and friends. Lord Winchester reflects on the family he chose, his blue eyes softening as he thinks of their shared bond. In the sunlit room, young Danielle plays joyfully with her stuffed bunny, a picture of pure childhood innocence. Niari gazes warmly at her daughter, cherishing the quiet peace they have fought so hard to protect. Her expression turns pensive as she realizes the weight of the legacy her family now carries. Neri and Tutor Reynold stand before the red-haired Countess, the tension of their confrontation slowly beginning to ebb. Reynold looks on with a mixture of concern and relief, standing tall beside her supportive friend. The Countess struggles to maintain her pride, her eyes brimming with unshed tears as she asks them to leave. Lord Winchester stands ready, his hand resting on his sword as he offers to safely escort the ladies home. Under a golden sunset, Niari asks her husband how he managed to find her at the Atri estate. Walking hand in hand through a glowing field, Winchester explains how the morning's heavy rain led him back to her side. He admits he became worried after hearing from a servant that the Countess had paid a solemn visit to the tutor's home. Neri smiles brightly at him, her heart full as she expresses her deep gratitude for his timely arrival. The couple shares a quiet moment of intimacy, surrounded by flowers and the fading light of the day. Surprised by his sudden confession, Nyari stops in her tracks and asks him to repeat what he said. The black-haired count looks away with a slight blush, his usual composure faltering in the face of his feelings. Nyari watches him in stunned silence, her own heart racing at the vulnerability her husband is showing. A memory of Lord Winchester's gentle smile flickers through her mind, reinforcing the deep bond they share. They stand close together in the sunset, the world around them blurring into a soft, golden glow. Nyari tightly grips her dress, feeling a wave of embarrassment at the thought of voicing her true emotions aloud. Winchester offers her a tender, knowing smile, his eyes reflecting the deep love he holds for his wife. Back at the Grand Winchester estate, the morning light marks the start of a much more peaceful day. Nyari and Tutor Reynold share a happy, lighthearted moment, their friendship stronger than ever after the recent ordeal. With a radiant smile, Nyari insists on helping the tutor, driven by her own genuine desire to do so. A charming depiction of the tutor captures her gratitude and the newfound light in her eyes. To a light clink sounding from the tray, Nyari quietly wishes that these tranquil, happy days could last forever. The peace is interrupted when a servant rushes in, breathlessly announcing the arrival of an official letter. Nyari accepts the envelope from the imperial household, her curiosity piqued by the unexpected royal correspondence. She is startled to find the letter is addressed specifically to her, rather than to Lord Winchester. Looking around the grand hall, she wonders what business the princess could possibly have with her. To her utter shock, the letter reveals that the princess is seeking her advice on a matter of romance. Nyari sits at her desk, staring at the letter in disbelief, as she questions her own romantic expertise. Later, Nyari meets with the brown-haired princess in a sun-drenched garden to discuss the unexpected request. Nyari nervously sips her tea, doubting whether she is the right person to give advice on love. The princess quickly dismisses her concerns, insisting that Nyari's own marriage is a model of true romance. Desperate for answers, the princess begs Nyari to share the secret behind her successful and loving relationship. Nyari hides a playful smile, secretly cringing at the memory of the lie she once told about falling in love. The princess leans in close, explaining that she can only confide this sensitive secret to someone she trusts. Nyari looks on with growing intrigue, surprised by the intensity of the royal woman's confession. The green-eyed princess gazes into the distance, her expression turning somber as she prepares to reveal her heart. Surrounded by the beauty of the garden, the two women sit in hushed conversation about matters of the heart. The princess confesses that her feelings are for someone whose social standing makes their romance strictly forbidden. Nyari asks if the princess is struggling with unrequited feelings for a man she shouldn't have fallen for. She further probes whether the mysterious man returns the princess's affections or if he remains unaware. Blushing deeply, the princess tries to maintain her royal composure while admitting the difficulty of her situation. Looking into her tea, the princess reflects on the complicated nature of a romance that must remain hidden. She finally names her love, Dominic de Turner, a respected member of the elite Imperial Knights. Nyari listens thoughtfully as the princess explains why revealing her feelings would cause immense social complications. Nyari warns that a knight might feel overwhelmed and pressured by a confession from a royal person. The princess sighs, wondering why her knight has yet to take the initiative and confess his own feelings. Nyari reflects on the social divide, comparing the princess to a main character and the knight to a mere supporter. Nyari reflects on the blonde knight, Dominic de Turner, and how his humble station complicates his romance with the princess. Standing before a stained glass window, the blonde knight remains unaware of the pink-haired princess's profound and forbidden affection. Gazing downward, Nyari feels a pang of self-doubt, still viewing herself as a mere supporting character in this grand world. Nyari looks at the family portrait of her black-haired husband and blonde daughter, feeling like an outsider in their legacy. Looking at the portrait, Nyari sees herself included, but with her eyes obscured, questioning if she truly deserves her place. Walking through the grand estate, Nyari remains haunted by the feeling that she is nothing more than a secondary figure. Snapped out of her thoughts during tea, Nyari is startled as the princess reacts with surprise to her unexpected perspective. The princess is deeply moved, prompting Nyari to vow that she will help the two lovers find their happy ending. With newfound determination, Nyari clenches her fist and pledges her full support to help the princess achieve her romantic goals. Lord Winchester returns to the estate, his cool demeanor softening slightly as he is welcomed back home after his duties. Meeting him in the hallway, Nyari eagerly asks the black-haired count if he completed the unusual errand she had requested. Winchester confirms he distributed iris bouquets to the knights, though he seems puzzled by the strange reactions he received. Nyari smiles brightly, pressing her husband to reveal if he also shared the specific flower meanings as she had instructed. Standing together in the library, the couple discusses the success of their quiet, floral mission among the elite Imperial Knights. Winchester recalls the knights' bewildered expressions, as many of them struggled to suppress their laughter at his uncharacteristic floral gift. Nyari giggles uncontrollably, imagining her stoic, serious husband awkwardly handing out flowers to his utterly confused and amused subordinates. Looking up at the grand hallway ceiling, Winchester admits that he typically ignores anything he deems unnecessary or frivolous. A gentle smile touches Winchester's lips as he confesses that Nyari has finally taught him the beauty of flower meanings. Nyari stares at him in stunned silence, her face heating up as she processes his unexpectedly tender and heartfelt words. Leaning in, Winchester playfully offers to learn even more meanings from her, his blue eyes filled with genuine, warm affection. A decorative vase overflowing with vibrant pink roses sits nearby, symbolizing the blossoming warmth and intimacy between the married couple. The couple shares a quiet moment of connection in the room, the tension of the day finally fading away completely. Winchester states that the language of flowers has become incredibly meaningful to him because of his deep feelings for Nyari. He looks down at the roses with a soft expression, his cold exterior completely melted by his wife's gentle influence. Nyari's heart races as she wonders if his words imply a much deeper confession than she ever dared to expect. She quickly dismisses the thought, assuming he must be practicing his romantic skills to help someone else's confession succeed. Realizing why the knights were so amused, Nyari smiles, while Winchester looks on with a touch of charming, quiet confusion. Nyari refocuses on her mission, determined to use her knowledge of flower meanings to aid the princess's social standing. Looking radiant in a new gown, Nyari prepares to host a grand gathering at the opulent and sunlit Winchester estate. Winchester pauses to admire a single pink rose, appearing much more relaxed since learning the secrets of the floral language. The grand hall is decorated with exquisite flowers, setting the stage for a day of social maneuvering and heartfelt gratitude. Nyari welcomes a group of noblewomen who are all clearly impressed by the magnificent party she has meticulously organized. With a modest smile, Nyari explains that the event is merely a small token of her sincere appreciation for them. The guests look around in awe, captivated by the elegant atmosphere and the breathtaking floral arrangements hanging from the ceiling. Nyari hands a stunning bouquet of blue flowers to a maid, ensuring every detail of her social plan is executed. The noblewomen are shocked by her generosity, but Nyari insists that she simply wanted to show her kindness and support. A dark-haired noblewoman watches Nyari with interest, noting the care put into the selection of each specific, beautiful bloom. Nyari beams with pride, her eyes sparkling as she presents the carefully curated blue flowers to her esteemed guest. Presenting the flowers to the Viscountess, Nyari explains that their specific meaning perfectly reflects the lady's pure and noble image. The concept of flower meanings sparks immediate curiosity among the guests, who have never heard of such a poetic idea. Neri continues to charm the women, highlighting how the beauty and fragrance of the flowers mirror their own unique virtues. The dark-haired Viscountess blushes deeply, visibly moved by the thoughtful and personalized compliment Niari has bestowed upon her. Clutching her bouquet, the Viscountess feels a surge of genuine affection for Niari, her heart touched by the meaningful gesture. She warmly thanks Lady Winchester, the social distance between them bridging through the simple, heartfelt gift of the blue flowers. A blonde noblewoman holds her own bouquet, listening as others remark on the legendary devotion between the Winchester couple. The guests gush over the perfect match between Niari and the Count, viewing them as the kingdom's most ideal romance. Smiles and blushes spread through the group as each woman feels uniquely valued by Nearest's insightful and personalized floral gifts. Neri carries a vibrant bouquet of red tulips, her expression peaceful as her social influence within the nobility steadily grows. She looks down at the tulips, her heart full as she realizes her efforts to bring people together are working. A guest in purple looks on thoughtfully, contemplating the changing tides and the warm atmosphere within the grand Winchester Hall. Neri presents a vibrant pink tulip bouquet to the dark-haired countess during a grand and elegant social gathering. With a gentle smile, Neri hands over the flowers, her plan to influence high society ladies finally in motion. A close-up reveals the stunning bouquet of pink and white tulips, representing a hidden message for the recipient. The countess reacts with confusion, questioning why Niari would offer a romantic flower to a woman who is married. Neri watches her intently, satisfied that her bold gesture has successfully provoked the exact curious reaction she had anticipated. Explaining her intent, Niari mentions she heard the countess was troubled by her husband's characteristic bluntness and cold nature. She suggests that receiving flowers might bridge the emotional gap when direct communication feels too difficult for the couple. The countess looks away in quiet contemplation, her guard lowering as she processes Niari's insightful and supportive words. A sudden gasp escapes the countess as Nearest's cheerful demeanor helps her see the flowers in a new light. The scene shifts to a ribbon-wrapped gift, highlighting the secret power held within the ancient language of tulips. A romantic vision appears of the countess and her husband, imagining a world where affection flows freely between them. In the daydream, the husband tenderly kisses his wife's hand among the tulips, fulfilling her deepest unspoken desires. Returning to reality, the countess stands speechless, deeply moved by the possibility of a more loving and affectionate marriage. Neri reflects on the risk of meddling in others' affairs, but remains committed to helping the countess find happiness. Clutching the flowers, Neri admits to herself that she acted on impulse without fully considering the social repercussions. The countess pulls the bouquet close to her heart, her expression softening into one of genuine emotional vulnerability. Tears of relief well up in the countess's eyes as the surrounding noblewomen watch the touching scene unfold. Neri remains silent, observing the weight of her actions as the countess experiences a moment of profound realization. The plan succeeds perfectly as the ladies beam with joy, each holding their own special bouquets from the party. Niari thinks to herself that she now only needs to wait for these influential women to do their part. She anticipates that the well-connected ladies will soon spread favorable rumors about the flowers and today's successful event. Standing confidently among the glittering crowd, Niari prepares for the next phase of her intricate and risky social strategy. The noblewomen whisper excitedly among themselves, captivated by the mysterious and romantic meanings behind Niari's thoughtful floral gifts. Niari stands triumphantly on the stairs, her bright smile reflecting the absolute success of her recent social maneuvering. Once alone, the tension breaks, and a wave of exhaustion hits Niari, causing her to slump over the table. She gazes at the leftover tulips in a vase, reluctant to let such beautiful flowers go to waste. A soft voice breaks her solitude as Niari looks up, resting her chin on her hand in quiet curiosity. Little blonde Daniel approaches with a sleepy expression, admitting she was unable to fall asleep in her room. Neri explains her dilemma regarding the party flowers, but her focus quickly shifts to her daughter's sweet presents. She asks Daniel if there is something specific she wants to make with the remaining blooms from the party. Daniel holds up a tiny white flower, a soft rustle marking her delicate movements as she presents it. The young girl smiles sweetly, revealing she has fashioned a tiny, precious flower ring for her beloved mother. Overwhelmed by her daughter's kindness, Niari's eyes fill with tears as she holds her hand over her mouth. Neri pulls Daniel into a warm, emotional embrace, the surrounding white flowers accentuating the purity of the moment. Startled by the sudden tears, Daniel looks up in concern, worrying if she has done something to upset her. Neri reassures the child with a tearful smile, explaining that sometimes happy emotions can be just as overwhelming. Daniel's face scrunches up in a cute, determined pout as she insists that her mother shouldn't cry anymore. A sharp click sounds as the door opens, signaling a new arrival just as Niari is comfortingly addressed. Count Larinus enters the room, stoically suggesting that any remaining work should be postponed until the following morning. A soft sigh of relief follows as Niari and Daniel drift into a peaceful sleep together in the garden. A text box confirms that the rumors of Niari's party have successfully spread across the kingdom like wildfire. Now dressed in a dark gown, Niari reflects on her plan's progress, but feels a lingering sense of anxiety. A sharp caw sounds from the birds outside as Niari stares out the window, her unease growing more intense. An excited maid bursts into the room, announcing the unexpected arrival of an official carriage from the imperial palace. Niari points to herself in disbelief, shocked that the palace envoys have come specifically to see her today. A sharp stop echoes in her mind as she panics, fearing that her social gambit has met with rejection. Her anxiety manifests as a vision of shattering glass, symbolizing her fear that her subtle methods have failed completely. Outside, a woman in blue formal attire addresses her as the Countess Winchester, requesting a private official audience. Nearest's eyes widen in absolute terror as a soft rustle sounds, her mind racing with thoughts of being rejected. The woman presents an official imperial letter, her bright expression suggesting a significant development from the royal family. A maid presents a letter to Niari, who reacts with a bright, cheerful laugh in the grand room. News of a romantic pairing between a pink-haired woman and a blonde man spreads throughout the empire. Neri reflects on her role at the heart of the latest social developments while looking at stylized portraits. A heavy stack of correspondence arrives with a solid thud, signaling a massive influx of new messages. Standing before piles of mail, the brown-haired Niari feels overwhelmed by her sudden, celebrity-like status in society. Neri covers her face in distress, realizing everyone is seeking her advice for their personal love troubles. The library door opens with a creak as Niari sighs, knowing she cannot simply ignore the desperate pleas. Lord Winchester appears with a characteristically stoic expression, his sharp blue eyes fixed on his wife. Winchester notices Niari's exhaustion, asking if she is feeling all right as she looks visibly pale from the stress. Niari feels awkward, remembering she only started this to call her husband darling, but remains completely unused to it. Blushing deeply, Niari attempts to excuse herself to the bedroom to escape the sudden, overwhelming social pressure. Suddenly, Winchester sweeps Neri off her feet, catching her completely by surprise as he lifts her into his arms. Carrying her effortlessly, Winchester firmly states that they are going to the bedroom together right this very moment. With a stern look, the black-haired count refuses her protests, his tone leaving no room for further argument. Niari is stunned by his unprecedented firmness, her face heating up as she processes his unexpectedly dominant behavior. Silent and determined, Winchester walks through the hallway while carrying his wife, his focus entirely on their destination. In the dimly lit room, Winchester warns that he will only put her down if she stops using formal titles. Neera's heart races as she wonders if his irritation stems purely from her failure to use a romantic pet name. A look of realization and delight washes over Niari as she finally understands the cause of her husband's mood. Surrounded by blooming peonies, the couple shares an intimate look as Winchester holds her close in his arms. Flustered, Neary avoids eye contact and softly asks to be put down as they reach their private quarters. Winchester carries her into the bedchamber, his steps heavy with purpose as the tension between them continues to build. With a gentle rustle, he sets her down on the bed, the intimate atmosphere filling the darkened room. Neary lies on the bed in a daze, her long brown hair splayed out as she watches her husband. She blames herself for the situation, feeling a sense of responsibility for the turn their evening has taken. Looking at Winchester's focused expression, Niari decides she might have to simply follow his lead for the night. A soft whoosh sounds as Winchester covers her with a blanket, catching the startled Niari off guard once again. Winchester bids her a calm goodnight, leaving the blushing Neary to wonder if they are truly just going to sleep. Reverting to his practical self, he tells her to rest early since she seems so incredibly tired from work. Neary feels a wave of relief, realizing his intentions were purely protective of her health and well-being. The couple lies together in the massive bed, the silence of the night finally bringing a sense of peace.
As the mansion falls quiet, Niari lets go of her worries, too exhausted to contemplate the evening's events further.
The next morning, Niari sits on the sofa and rubs her eyes, still feeling the lingering effects of exhaustion. Her attention is drawn to a fresh bouquet of pink roses on the side table, wondering if Winchester left them. The vibrant roses glisten in the light, a silent testament to the growing affection within the Winchester household. Niari stands beside her stoic husband, a faint smile on her face as they share a quiet morning moment. A sudden thump echoes in her heart as Niari looks at the flowers, touched by his uncharacteristic gesture. Clutching her blushing face, she can't believe the normally aloof man would do something so sweet and romantic. Looking at the grand estate, Niari tries to convince herself he didn't mean anything special by the floral gift. Later in the study, Niari is surprised to find an invitation from the prestigious Duchess of Devonshire. She reflects on the son of Tantilia, Brian de Devonshire, whose portrait glows with an almost divine brilliance. A memory surfaces of the Duchess supporting the blonde Daniel, offering encouragement during a high-stakes tea meeting. Determined to protect Daniel's future, Niari resolves to keep her daughter away from any complications involving Ansho. With a confident smile, the brown-haired Niari prepares to meet the influential Duchess to secure their social standing. The silver-haired Duchess of Devonshire welcomes Niari warmly, her green eyes twinkling with genuine hospitality and grace. In the garden, Niari points out a guest to her young blonde daughter, Daniel, who watches with curiosity. A silver-haired boy with bright green eyes looks on in surprise, his appearance striking and unique. The young Daniel stands beside the silver-haired boy, the two children forming a charming and visually distinct pair. Walking with the Duchess, Nari considers delaying her plans for Daniel to enjoy a more peaceful childhood. The silver-haired boy shyly clutches the fabric of Niari's dress, a small scuff sounding as he hides behind her. The silver-haired Duchess confirms the situation as she stands beside Niari while young Brian hides shyly behind her. Little blonde Daniel beams with pure joy, her eyes sparkling with excitement and innocent, heartfelt charm. Watching Daniel walk away, the brown-haired Niari wonders if her daughter was always this incredibly friendly with strangers. Taking his hands, Daniel happily announces her plan to go and play together with the young Master Brian. The Duchess encourages the children to play nicely, leaving Niari shocked by her daughter's sudden and dependable social confidence. Surrounded by floral patterns, Niari strikes a confident pose as she prepares to execute her next social maneuver. Sitting on a picnic blanket, Daniel decides to weave a beautiful flower crown for Brian using fresh, white blooms. A gentle rustle sounds as Daniel carefully places the finished white flower crown onto Brian's silver hair. With hearts fluttering in the background, Brian blushes deeply, appearing completely smitten by Daniel's sweet and thoughtful gesture. The two children continue their play in the grass, a soft movement following their busy little hands as they play. Hiding behind a large tree, Nyari keeps a watchful eye on Brian and Daniel as they enjoy their picnic.
Brian's eyes well up with emotional tears, a soft sniffling sound echoing his overwhelming feelings of gratitude and joy.
Both Nyari and Daniel panic at his tears, quickly trying to reassure Brian that his own efforts are impressive. Sitting among vibrant blue flowers, Brian silently resolves to find a special present to give back to Daniel. Daniel looks up in surprise, her blue eyes wide as she senses a change in Brian's quiet, thoughtful demeanor. Overwhelmed by the pure scene, Nyari clutches her face and sobs with joy over how incredibly cute the children are. Watching from a distance, Nyari feels a sense of peace seeing both children bond so naturally in the garden. Daniel happily declares her intention to make a matching flower crown for her toy bunny as Brian watches her. The Duchess expresses her relief and joy at seeing the two kind children playing so happily together in the sun. Turning to serious business, the silver-haired Duchess asks Nyari what specific matter she wished to consult her about today. Standing among blooming hydrangeas, the Duchess explains that there is a troubling issue with the garden's beautiful flowers.